So within a week or so, Milo lost his book deal. He was disinvited from CPAC, that's the Conservative Political Action Conference, and he lost his job with Breitbart. And this was all over comments that he had made regarding sex with underage children. And for me, I personally found the press conference very confusing from the start, in that he starts out by saying, no, this is all taken out of context. Taken out of context. And then he goes on to apologise for it. And it's like, you're apologising for something that was taken out of context? And then he goes on to resign over this. And it's like, dude, you don't apologise and resign over something that is taken out of context. And that's until you actually take a look at some of the things he said, and it's like, actually, it's pretty difficult to see any context in which this is going to be not a problem.
And did you go to one of his parties?
I went to other people who I won't name of a similar stature in Hollywood. I went to their boat parties and to their house parties and things, and some of the things I have seen have beggared belief. I don't want to be indiscreet about specific people.
Right, you don't have to do that.
It's going
Just dance
to be,
around the facts.
Yeah, dangerous, but I can tell you the truth without dropping anyone in it.
Okay.
I mean, some of the boys there were very young. Very young.
Do you think that's what's going on with that guy who directed X-Men? Bunch of
Bryan Singer?
Yeah, a bunch of 14-year-old predators going after that poor man.
I'm not sure it's the case with him, whether I ever met Bryan Singer or whether I even knew who he was then. But I knew other people of similar stature, as I say, and there were some very young boys around at that time.
I mean, he's basically saying here that there were these parties where there were very, very young people. I mean, he's basically implying minors at best, and he won't actually... He's covering up for that. And then even more disturbing is just all of these people who have come forward and they're covering up for Milo, making excuses for him. You know what would actually make a difference at this point is actually for Milo to come forward and say who those people at the parties were. Right? An apology at this point really doesn't cut it. Right? The thing that would is saying who these people were. I mean, I just don't get why he keeps on saying it's taken out of context. If it's taken out of context, that's fine. Just show it in the original context and you're done. You're clean. You're in the clear. But that's not where Milo goes with this. He goes down much more the Sarkeesian route, that there is this huge conspiracy out to get him.
They're, you know, it's very obvious that this was a highly coordinated and very well planned and well funded attack on me.
And it's like, I'm not seeing it, dude. You had one video released that was basically summing up all these dumb things that you said, right? This isn't a massive conspiracy here. This is one video, and it was publicized by this group called the Reagan Battalion. I'm not seeing a large conspiracy here. Now, for me, the rise and fall of Milo is it's a matter of meh, in that the guy was a self-confessed troll, okay? In fact, maybe the more pertinent question is why this self-confessed troll had been invited to the Conservative Political Action Committee conference, or why he was actually a writer at Breitbart in the first place. I mean, you know, how can you claim to be a credible news organization when you've got self-confessed trolls writing for you?
Because the media chooses to selectively define me as a political figure in some circumstances and a comedian in others.
No, I like to think of myself as a virtuous troll.
So in many ways, I see a lot of this as, you know, he made his bed, chickens coming home to roost, that sort of thing. So in many ways, the more interesting thing here is just who it was who actually pulled the rug out from Milo's feet here. In that it wasn't the loony left, it wasn't the feminists, it wasn't the social justice warriors. It was the base, the hardcore alt-right and right, the Conservative Political Action Conference and Breitbart. They all turned their back on him.
First being Milo's former manager saying he doesn't support him here, and the publisher Simon & Schuster announced that they are canceling Milo's book deal.
Right, no one's saying he committed a crime. He said some heinous shit. Get straight on that. Why would you possibly defend it? Did you hear what he said? Why would you possibly think that's cool to say? The left is a threat to you. They want to beat you up. That's what they want to do. They want to kill you. and they're explicit about it, and they're talking about it. The left is the biggest threat right now, and the biggest threat combined is the left and the Islamist in America. That's the biggest single threat. I don't wish anybody badly, but do I kind of hope Milo goes away? I think I do. I think I do. I think that would be best for everybody, right? And if he stays around, I hope he learns something, like some humility or something like that. By the way, Andrew Breitbart would not have gone for this for one fucking second. Let me just say that. I'm going to say it on the record. You think Andrew Breitbart, who had 4 kids, would have put up with someone talking about this for 1 second? Absolutely not. I was there when Andrew dropped people for similar shenanigans. He would not have put up with this for 1 second. That Milo comment would have been goodbye, goodbye, no, 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 goodbye.
Which is kind of what none of these folks would describe as a narrative breaker, in that it's true that when Milo went to universities, he was a superb idiot magnet.
You are so, let's say, helped by the fact that liberals just always take the bait.
The point where I actually found myself questioning, is this real or staged? I mean, when he first started going to universities with his dangerous faggot tour, you know, there were these women who would sort of get up in the audience, scream and smear fake blood on their faces, and it's like, really? This is some guy I've barely heard of speaking to a few hundred people at a university. Is this real? And it's always difficult like this, in that it is now just so difficult to tell crazy from fake crazy. And this isn't a particularly new thing, it's a universal problem in that it goes back. I remember when I was dealing with Venom Fang X, this is almost a decade ago now, for years there were people saying, he's not really that stupid, a creationist, he's just trolling you, he's pretending to be stupid, he's a po. And the same thing with Laughing Witch, that if someone had actually sent me those letters, you know, so this letter that she writes to my employer calling me a Nazi and what was it, a leader of skinheads or something, commanding an army of skinheads. I mean, if you'd have actually just showed me that, I would have just said troll, right? It's only because through years of experience, I knew that she was actually being serious, that I knew she was being serious. I mean, it's one of those things that it is so difficult to tell these days. So yeah, on this narrative breaker thing, it was the liberal universities that invited him in and allowed him to speak. The people who supported free speech.
America has a colossal free speech problem. The land of the First Amendment has some of the most oppressive social restrictions on free expression anywhere in the Western world. To have the right to do, be, say, read anything. I want people to be able to dress however they want. I want to realize their potential and have the full limits of creative expression available to them. That isn't currently the case in America.
While it was the conservatives and the alt-right that both denied him a platform to voice his opinion. Further, and this one really does grind my gears, when Milo was asked, was he going to go to CPAC? You know, just to show how much he appreciated free speech and the such like.
I am proud to be a free speech warrior in America, and I will continue to do that.
His reply was along the lines of, no, I wouldn't want to be ingracious and cause a fuss.
I probably won't go to CPAC. I don't think it would be indecorous for me to go and cause a fuss.
And it's like, Jesus, dude, that's all you do at universities is be ingracious and cause a fuss. I mean, I don't know if you can turn the hypocrisy dial up to 11, but if you could, this is what it would look like. So I'm just going to give you what I think happened here as just an opinion, right? So it's not like this is deeply rooted in anything. This is just a general picture of what I think actually happened. And that's that, you know, when Milo was first bought into all of this, his dangerous faggot tour and all that sort of thing, he was a superb Trojan horse to send into the universities under the guise of free speech, which I fully approve of, and he was a superb idiot magnet. I mean, I tip my hat to the guy. You know, if you wanted to make the loony left look loony. Yeah, he did fantastically. The problem comes is when that gets really popular, people might actually start thinking that that's what Breitbart's all about, you know, basically just going in and trolling university students, or that's what the conservatives are about. And honestly, drag queen conservatism isn't really the base.
University, we filled a 1,200-seater in 48 hours. I came out in drag, in full drag, as a drag queen.
Drag queen conservatism isn't really the base. The base is more, you know, well, I mean, you've got Steve Bannon, for one, who is making these apocalyptic end-time movies, Christian movies.
And now, trouble for the preeminent dynasty of our age.
In the beginning, God, but then the evil one, the father of lies, tempted them. Man shakes his fist at his creator and says, I decide what's right and wrong. God is dead. I'm my own God. Now all creation is subject to its bondage to decay. In the absence of God, the man with the biggest stick determines your worth. Caesar demands his pinch of incense. Violence, decadence, political anarchy, moral decay. Welcome to the city of man. That a human civilization's best chance of survival is to anchor itself in the God of creation. We are image bearers of God.
And he's also the advisor, one of the advisors to the president. And, you know, other people like Pray the Gay Away, Mike Pence. Drag queen conservatism, it's difficult to see it's got a future there, you know. Which is why, when they were given an excuse, they gave him the push. Now, Milo at this press conference was a walking contradiction, which is maybe what you expect from a professional troll. But I was disappointed by just how few people actually saw this. And well, maybe it was they didn't want to see it. I mean, from the get-go, all of this, there's this highly organized campaign out to get me. It's like, no, dude, it was one video. All they did was get all the dumb stuff that you'd said, put it together, and they sent it from, what was it, the Reagan Battalion to the to CPAC. That's it. I mean, where is this giant conspiracy? And yeah, what? Oh, all the people you pissed off over the years, people who you proudly pissed off over the years, came at you with long knives. Well, I'm stunned. I mean, from the very first words, he claims to be the victim. It's insane, right? You take a look at the footage where he's basically boldly claiming that, oh no, I was the sexual predator in all of this.
My experiences as a victim.
When I was 14, trust me, I was the predator. I was the predator.
You were the predator. You were chasing after the priest.
The instigator.
He was trying to stay close to God.
I was chasing everybody. I was aggressively seeking out sexual company of adults.
My experiences as a victim.
I was the predator at 14, let me tell you.
And then in the press conference, he goes from, you know, flamboyant pearls to serious Milo wearing a suit, who starts off, I was the victim of terrible abuse as a child. And it's like, dude, this is directly in contradiction to what you said earlier. But like I say, I mean, the guy is a walking contradiction. Yeah, which is maybe the sort of thing that gets traction in a land where facts don't matter anymore. And this is maybe how you end up with things like President Trump, or where, oh God, you know, where you go with all these people are climate change denialists, right? And I hate to break it to you, but reality is going to catch up with you sooner or later. I mean, you can live in a bubble of opinions. You know what you can't live in a bubble from is reality, right? The world is actually a bloody harsh place, and the only thing that protects us from it is the knowledge that we've gained through the scientific method. You start undermining that, sooner or later you're gonna have a bad time. So I mean, maybe the most serious thing that Milo actually says here is that he's actually was witness to all of these things and actively chose to do nothing, which is... this is really hard to justify. But maybe more disturbing is just how far some skeptics were willing to go to give him a free pass for this. And, God, the mental gymnastics. And this is maybe why more recently I've been sort of going off in a separate direction. And there's actually a stream that was done recently on this between TLDR and I think Harmful Opinions. And they basically sum up a lot of the sentiments that I've had recently, which is, yeah, the skeptics aren't quite as skeptical as they used to be, and they seem to be going. There seems to be a lot more tribalism coming into this, and it's not a matter of whether it's right or not. It's a matter of who's saying it that matters.
Let me tell you the pattern this takes on. I've seen it with Anthony Weiner. I've seen it with John Edwards. The first stage is people who are partisan deny the scandal. Oh no, it's bullshit. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's not. So the second part is excuses. Well, you know, they did it, but you know, or they may have done something, but you know, it's not really as bad as they're making it out to be. You know, they're on our side, so we need to be okay with it or whatever. Then what happens is eventually the other shoe starts to drop and people are like, fuck them. That's what happens. A lot of people are still in that mode. If you're still in that mode, you're headed for a fall. I got to tell you, you are headed for a fall.
You know, there's just this whole element that, you know, whenever anyone else does anything along these lines, it's identity politics. Just identity politics, unless, of course, it's one of us, then we don't criticize them, and if it's one of them, then we burn them at the stake for it. I mean, things like this kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth, you know? I mean, look, just for the massive double standards, if a social justice warrior had been caught saying things like this, they would have been burned at the stake without appeal. But because it's Milo, some of these folks just can't bend over far enough to make excuses for him. I mean, it really has gone from the truth is valid no matter where it originates to it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It matters if they're on our side or not. Also, been a load of these justifications along the lines that he's sure he said something that was crazy, but he said something that's okay as well that contradicts it. Therefore, he gets a pass, a green light. Sorry, but that's not how it works. If you say something crazy like, I think the age of consent is about right, but I think it's okay, or I don't have any problems with 30-year-olds having relationships with 13-year-olds. You don't get a green light on that. And the lengths that people have gone to justify this, I mean, I had some interesting exchanges on Twitter, and again, it's sometimes difficult to tell whether these people are genuinely that stupid or idiots. You know, so there's just one of these comments that Milo came out with, which is like, it's not paedophilia if they're a sexually mature 13-year-old. And it's like, you know, statements like this, the defense that people are trotting out is, well, technically he's correct. And it's like, dude, if this goes to court, I want different lawyers. And, you know, you seriously want to go trying to sort of split the hairs between paedophilia and I think it's called hebephilia. You know, basically one's prepubescent and one's pubescent or whatever. I mean, it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's messed up either way. I mean, hell, even the paedophiles that Milo himself claims to expose.
I'm horrified by pedophilia, and I have devoted large portions of my career to exposing child abusers. I've exposed 3 of them.
I mean, it's kind of difficult to know which ones he's talking about, but let's just take a look at some of the paedophiles who have emerged from the social justice warrior midst and just how badly that was actually deemed at the time. I mean, for instance, there was this guy called Varys77 who was the paedophile who was in Anita Sarkeesian's Moderators and, you know, widely condemned, probably rightly so. And you take a look at his rap sheet and what is it? It's 14 to 16-year-old. I mean, where were these folks splitting the hairs between paedophile and hebephile then? I mean, it's... if this is the level you have to go to try and justify this sort of stuff, it's messed up. And yeah, the same with Hannibal Victor. He was in the same category, right? But people had no problem whatsoever in calling him a paedophile. Ironically, it turns out that I was a little more caged in my language. But yeah, I mean, for the majority of people, it really doesn't matter. I mean, hell, the majority of the people who are used as bait in the To Catch a Predator series are sort of 12 to 14.
Both know he's really 40. And what he doesn't know is that I have all the transcripts of his sordid conversations with minors.
And why would you at 30 think it would be okay to hang out with a 13-year-old girl home alone? You tried to solicit a 13-year-old girl online using graphic sexual language. What do you think should happen to you?
Sir, I'm not like that. I was just playing with her,
Just playing with her.
I'm not playing with her, but, you know, it just seemed like where she was, you know, like...
She was 13.
But we're talking about 13, 25, 13, 28. These things do happen perfectly consensually.
And you thought it was appropriate to walk into the home of a 14-year-old boy who you thought was alone, buck naked. What was your plan?
I don't know, sir.
This for a high school teacher.
No, sir, I've never done this before.
So you just woke up this morning and said, I'm going to get involved in an internet conversation with a 14-year-old boy. I'm going to go to his house, strip naked, and walk in with a 12-pack of beer. This was just something you thunk up today.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, doesn't cut it. What would have happened? What would have happened, John, if I wasn't here?
I probably would have chickened out, sir.
Chickened out. Do you see why that is hard for me to believe?
And yeah, whether you call it paedophilia, which is what people usually use as a blanket term for this, yeah, it's not technically correct, but it doesn't really matter. What you're describing is still, yeah, it's a blanket term for stuff that's messed up with young kids. I mean, hell, on some of this stuff, I've been having flashbacks when I used to argue with Muslims about, you know, there's this thing for you, those of you who don't know, that Muhammad's, one of his wives was 8 years old or something, and he didn't consume it till, I forget whether it was 9 or 12 or whatever. It was ludicrously young, and their justification for why this isn't paedophilia, messed up on so many levels, is because back then women sexually matured quicker, and it's completely the opposite, it turns out. But and therefore she was sexually mature, and therefore it was okay. So one of the paedophiles that Milo certainly had a hand in outing was Sarah Nidberg. And the left, the social justice warriors, were certainly given their share of grief for actually giving shelter to Sarah Nidberg, and I would say rightfully so. But you take a look at the excuses that Sarah Nidberg came out with when all of this came to light. And I'm going to, even if you take Milo's exact article on where he's outing this paedophile, I don't know whether it's a he or she, whatever, they came out with this excuse that I was just a teenage edgelord. And Milo quite rightly says that that's complete bollocks. You can't come out with stuff like this and just say, oh, I was just being a teenage edgelord. And what does Milo come out with?
Understand that my usual blend of sassy gay British sarcasm, provocation and gallows humour might have come across as flippancy. I will not apologise for dealing with my life experiences in the way that I choose to, which is through humour and provocation. I will never stop making jokes about taboo subjects.
I mean, really, it's this simple. If this is the criteria that Milo was using to burn Sarah Nidberg, why shouldn't he be held to the same standards himself? So, you know, wiping away all the surface crap and cutting to the core of it, this thing where Milo says that he's been to these parties where there were these very, very young boys, and then you cut to the press conference where he says, I deplore this sort of thing. I deplore it so much that I expose it. And it's like, no, dude.
I don't want to be indiscreet about specific people.
Right, you don't have to do that.
It's going
Just
to
dance
be,
around the facts.
Yeah, dangerous. But I can tell you the truth without dropping anyone in it.
Okay.
I mean, some of the boys there were very young. Very young.
Like, no, dude, you don't expose it. That's the problem. You're actually covering up for it, not exposing it. And then sort of coming back to the more superficial stuff about the sort of fallout from all of this. I mean, honestly, if all of his allies, which is basically the Conservatives in the form of CPAC and the alt-right in the form of Breitbart, you know, once they've turned their back on you because this was beyond the pale for them, I wouldn't hold my breath that the universities won't follow suit with that. And even if they do sort of say, you know, you can still come, it's an absolute free gift to the protesters in that now they only really have to turn up with what you actually said on the placards, and basically you're in an indefensible place, right? Until you actually sort of come out and say who these people were, you're not exposing this sort of behaviour, you're covering up for it. I mean, on top of that, you take comments like this.
Yeah, dangerous, but I can tell you the truth without dropping anyone in it.
Okay.
I mean, some of the boys there were very young. Very young.
And all of a sudden, names like the dangerous faggot tour start taking on different connotations, as does the name of the book, Dangerous. And honestly, if you'd look to history, examples of people who have gone down this route and, you know, come back in this sort of field of political punditry is small to non-existent. I mean, even if you're looking wider fields, it's pretty hard to come back from something like this. So yeah, I mean, if I were a gambling man, I don't see that it's certainly not going to be business as normal. You know, the alt-right have turned their backs on him, Breitbart have turned their backs on him, the Conservatives have turned their backs on him. The universities, it remains to be seen. But, you know, I guess it's one of those things, live by internet outrage, die by internet outrage. He enjoyed getting the headlines for being controversial. He was controversial.